And hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge back once again with another installment of my ongoing weekly series Till the Fabled End. And today we are continuing from last week, we are continuing to look at the mini-series Fables The Wolf Among Us, which is based on the video game The Wolf Among Us. So I gave a brief and perhaps slightly confused overview last time round, but just to summarize, The Wolf Among Us is a video game made by Telltale Games, released across multiple consoles as 5 distinct episodes. It's kind of in the same vein as the Walking Dead point and click series or the Tales from the Borderlands series, which is also excellent. So it's basically by those guys, the people that did those kind of point and click games. They also did a series of Batman ones as well, and they tend to do episodic content. While The Wolf Among Us, the game, is great. It's got great art, it's got great voice acting, it's really well written. And then subsequently, given that's the game based on the comic, there is now a comic based on the game based on the comic. And that comic is called Fables, The Wolf Among Us, and it's a 16-issue series. Last week we looked at the first trade paperback, which is just called Trade Paperback 1, and that collected issues 1 to 7. And in that, it pretty much covered all the events from episode 1, Faith, and episode 2, Smoke and Mirrors, if you've been playing the video game. And so now we're looking at the second trade paperback, which collects issues 8 to 16. And in that sense, it pretty much covers episodes 3, 4, and 5, which is A Crooked Mile, In Sheep's Clothing, and Cry Wolf, respectively. From my point of view, this was a very straightforward continuation from the first one. I mean, I guess they had to just split it just for the sake of splitting it into 2 trades, but it's one overarching story. And again, much like the first trade paperback that we looked at last week, this is a very limpid, very faithful translation or adaptation rather of the game, scene by scene, step by step, character by character. The game is excellent, really, really brilliant. It's got a major cult following and it's totally well deserved. It's fantastic. The comic isn't quite as good, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Firstly, the art style is slightly inconsistent. I don't have a problem with the fact the art style is different to the main Fables comics, and it's also different to the Wolf Among Us video game. That's absolutely fine. I think the issue that I have is that the art style actually kind of varies in terms of its tonality and its style within the series across the course of these 16 issues. Sometimes it'll vary within a single issue. You'll have Bigby looking quite menacing and semi sort of realistically proportioned, and then in the next panel, have him looking slightly cartoonish and caricatured in his proportions with no real rationale or reason why. And that I found not necessarily jarring, but it just kind of showed it to be a slightly less polished comic. The second thing I would say is that both the trade paperback that I read today, so the second trade paperback, issues 8 to 16, and the one that we read last week, they both contain some optional or added extras that weren't in the video game. In each case, it's kind of looking back. Well, in the first trade paperback, it's looking back at events that happened in the homelands and then also back when Bigby was first kind of learning to pass as human. And that was okay. It didn't add anything, it didn't detract anything, it was just another bit. And then for this, in the second trade paperback, there's kind of a sub story about a place called the Silvering. I'm not going to spoil like who it's about and who the character that it's fleshing out or providing more nuance for is, but frankly, it just wasn't great. Didn't really add a huge amount. I don't really know why this was added as a creative choice because, as far as I recall, it wasn't in the video game and it definitely doesn't add anything. In fact, it could quite easily be removed and the story as a whole would be a bit stronger, to be honest. I'm not enthralled by it. So those are two of the concerns I have. The third and final concern I have is really to do with the narrative. The game itself ends in this wonderful, slightly ambiguous film noir sort of way. I'm not going to give spoilers for that, of course. The comic almost ends that way, but literally the last couple of pages kind of show you a bit too much. It's like, look, you could have just finished it here and then you just carried on for another 20 seconds. Why? That extra bit doesn't add anything. In fact, it kind of takes it away. You have hints, you have intrigue, you have mystery. And the last couple of pages, oh, it's this. That doesn't like show storytelling discipline. It's like the point where you have to know not to tell your readers or your audience or the game players something. And the video game does that very well. The comic perhaps is on the wrong side of that line for my taste. That's my overall review of this. That said, don't want to be negative about it. This is not a bad comic at all. If you're a Fables fan, you should definitely read this. But if you're a Fables fan, you should definitely read this after having played the game. And if you're a Fables fan, you should definitely play the game. The game is highly recommended. The game is, to give it a rating, awesome-tacular. Whereas the comic is just, it's okay. It's not as good as the game, and it's got some bits which aren't necessarily missteps, but kind of raised an eyebrow and made me think, why are they doing this slightly irrelevant or unnecessary thing? Other than that, like I say, it's a nice accompaniment to the game. 16 issues. I'm not sure it's really easily available as single issue. We tried to track it down. I never saw a single issue of it anywhere. But the trade paperbacks are available. You can grab them off Amazon or any kind of bookshop. And I read both of those. So those are the two trades that we looked at there. Okay, so with the Wolf Among Us miniseries out of the way, that then leads us to what I suspect is going to be the very last Fables video we do, which will be next week. Our homework for next week is the Fables hardcover, volume 16, which is the final kind of epilogue series of Fables issues that literally came out in the last year or so. And the hardcover actually got released literally 1 or 2 months ago. So that's in my collection. I'll be reading that over the next week. And yeah, that's our homework for next time. Until then, everyone, stay classy. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. As always, please like, comment, subscribe. As always, please follow me on Twitter at I am Thomas Judge, where I will post a daily review of whatever comics I've been reading. You can get an idea of what I'm up to on the channel. And as always, please support the channel by heading over to Amazon.com and checking out my prose novel about superheroes. It's a completely original piece of work. The first episode in it is called Arrivals, and the series as a whole is called No Gods or Kings. You can find an excerpt of that on my website, nogodsorkings.com. Until next time, everybody, stay classy.